ID lesson for quiz number 9. Um, we're getting close to the end here, and I know there are a lot of birds now that you're responsible for knowing. So I did throw in at least one really easy one for you today. I did change a couple of the birds from the birds that were listed in the original list that's at the top of the Moodle page. I'm going to be updating that, but be careful if you're using an old list, if you downloaded it or something. Things have changed a little bit. Okay, so to start off with, we're going to do the peregrine falcon. I decided to do the peregrine because we've been talking about it the last 2 weeks in our lessons, so I thought we might as well put it on our ID list. So the peregrine, as we know, is a bird that nests on cliff sides, and there are quite a few in Vermont. Actually, those of us who went birding last Saturday, we saw, well, no, that's not true. Bill and Kyla had already left, so just just Zach and I saw a peregrine on the way home. So they're around. So they are one of our falcons. So falcons have much pointier wings than some of the, like the red tail, who has the big wide wings. Okay, so pointed wings. I think the most distinctive feature, if you can see it up close, is the face mask. It almost looks like it's wearing one of those hoods that people who hunt with falcons sometimes put on their birds. So it's got this black face mask that's pretty distinctive. Otherwise, it has kind of a stocky body, pointed wings, and then it has this really fine barring all along the undersides. These are incredibly agile flyers. Actually, the fastest animal in the world, I believe. When they dive down from a height, they can get going to incredible speeds. So that's the peregrine falcon. You do not need to know it by sound. Okay, moving on to our next species, and that is a bird called the least flycatcher. So I don't know if you can remember the other flycatchers that we've learned so far. We've learned the eastern wood pewee, and we've learned the eastern phoebe. Those are both flycatchers, although flycatcher isn't in the name. And you can see that this bird looks a lot like those birds, right? And remember, with the eastern wood pewee, I didn't ask you to know it by sight. And I'm actually going to do that with this bird as well. So I'm not going to ask you to ID it. No, let's change this a little bit. I'm going to ask you to know that it's a flycatcher. So if I put a picture up like this on the quiz, you should be able to identify it as one of the birds in the flycatcher family. I'm not going to make you know the difference between a least flycatcher and an eastern wood pewee. That's pretty difficult. But you can tell the difference by sound, so you do need to know this bird by sound. So let's listen to it. I have to remember how to do that. Here we go. So the least flycatcher, I really enjoy watching them because they're just they're fairly small. That's why they're called least, and their whole body kind of gets into their call. It's a pretty simple call. People say that it says Chebek, Chebek, Chebek. So let's listen to it. Okay, so it's not quite 2 syllables, it's almost one, but Chebek, Chebek, Chebek. And their whole body shakes when they do it. It's pretty fun to watch. So these are birds. We're getting into birds now that you can't see yet. They're birds that have gone south for the winter, and they're going to be migrating in. So be listening for these birds in the woods when you go on hikes and things. Okay, next bird is called the white-throated sparrow. This is a bird that's known for its beautiful song. It has a very haunting song, and we'll get to that in a minute. But how do you know a white-throated sparrow when you see it? It is one of the more distinctive sparrows. We've had some that are a little bit harder, like say the song sparrow or the field sparrow. This one is a little bit easier because it sounds like its name. I mean, it looks like its name. So ignore the one. So the way Cornell does this, they put a similar species on the right hand side. So that's a white crown sparrow. So don't look at that. Look at the one here on the left. And notice it does have a white throat, and the males, this white throat is very distinctive. So it has a very bright white throat, and then it has these two little yellow patches over its eyes. So let's see if we can see a different. Here's a really good photo. So when you see that, notice it is similar to the white crowned sparrow over here on the right, except it's got a white throat and the yellow spots over the eyes. So if you remember those two things, you can pretty easily identify a white-throated sparrow. Now this one you do need to know by its song. And it says it has a very melodic sort of flute-like sound. So we look listening to the tone, but the pattern is like poor Sam Peabody, 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 or poor Sam Peabody, Peabody, Peabody. If you go all the way to Canada and find one, then it says, "Oh sweet Canada, Canada, Canada." Here it is. So notice that one dropped in pitch. So the pitches vary. So that one went, "Yo, oh sweet Canada, Canada, Canada," or "Old Sam Peabody, Peabody, Peabody." But that pattern, that rhythm, is going to be the same. So it has that really whistly flute-like tone, and then when you're looking at it, remember look for the white throat and the yellow spots over the eyes. Okay, the next bird. Okay, we're starting. This week is kind of warbler lesson, you guys. This is going to be a little bit challenging. Um, Only because these are birds that you're probably not familiar with. Okay, um, but they're going to be coming, and if you can learn these birds when you go out into the woods, these birds are going to be all over the place. It's just they don't come to feeders. They tend to be in forests. They don't just hang out, by the side of the road. So they aren't so common if you're not looking for them. But if you go looking for birds during spring migration, say mid-May, you're going to see these birds. And the first one is called the yellow-rumped warbler. And it is called that because it has a yellow rump. Some people refer to them as butterbutts because it looks like they have some yellow butter on their butt. So let's look at a few different pictures here. So they don't only have yellow on the rump, they have yellow on their throat, they have yellow on the top of their head, and they have yellow sort of under their wings, on their underwing coverts. But here you can see the yellow rump. So the female looks a lot more like the male, only it doesn't have the bright wing bars or the yellow on the top of the head. But remember, I'm not going to ask you about the females. This is the distinctive male. It's very gray and black. Gray, black, and white with these bright yellow markings. So it's actually fairly distinctive. Remember, warblers, we're talking like not much bigger than a chickadee, probably chickadee size. So these are small birds. I know sometimes it's hard to tell from a photograph how big these birds are. So it's about the size of a chickadee and all these distinctive markings. The yellow-rumped warbler, I am not going to ask you to know the call. It makes kind of a variety of noises, sounds, and frankly, I still get confused with yellow-rumped warblers. I'm still struggling with it every year. I have to kind of relearn it. So let's move on to our next warbler. And we're going to go with the black-throated green warbler. So this is, one of those birds that you can impress people with. Well, that's a black-throated green warbler. The black-throated green warbler, I feel like green is a little bit of a stretch. It's mainly yellow and then yellow-green, okay? The black throat is very clearly black. Okay, so you have this dark black throat, and then you have this green wash on the back and yellow on the face. So let's look at some more photos here. This is a good one. So when you see it from the side, it's going to look more yellow than it is green. So, but this is a black-throated green. Um, there aren't too many things you could confuse it with. If you see the picture on the right here, the golden cheek warbler, you could confuse it with that, but you're not going to see a golden cheek warbler all over the woods around Vermont. But you are going to see a black-throated green warblers. They nest here. They're singing all summer long, and they're probably one of the birds I hear the most, say in the midsummer when other birds have kind of stopped singing. So if you can learn their song, you can identify these guys. And their song is pretty easy. It says zoo, 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 zee, or zoo, 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 zee. Let's listen to it. Okay, so that zoo, 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 zee is a very burry, very kind of raspy sound. And it always does that kind of same pattern. So it should be pretty easy to identify. All right, we've got one more warbler to do for this week. And this one is the black and white warbler. And the black and white warbler is also a fairly common warbler. And I think if you work at learning this bird, this is a bird that you're going to be able to find around. They tend to hang out sort of on the tree trunks and near on the branches of the trees. They're not kind of out in the foliage, more like black-throated greens are going to be out sort of at the edges looking for insects in the leaves. These are more looking on the tree trunks. And they're really quite lovely. They're striped, kind of zebra striped, very striped. Their chest is striped, their back is striped, their head is striped. So they just look like a zebra striped bird. And you do need to know the song. And the song sounds like a squeaky wheel. It's kind of like squeaky, 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 squeaky. Okay, so that's the black and white warbler. Now, I was feeling bad for you because sometimes people get overwhelmed with warblers and it's hard. So the next bird, I changed it. I'm going to do a bald eagle. So you can thank me for this. I'm going to do bald eagle. So you all know a bald eagle, I think. Bald eagles have white heads and they have white tails. Now this is a mature bald eagle. It actually takes a bald eagle about 4 years to get to a full white head and a full white tail. So you can see eagles. In fact, on Saturday, we saw an eagle, those of us who went birding, and it was kind of far away. You can tell it's an eagle, but it was not. It was an immature, so I'm not sure whether it was a second or third year bird. If you get really good at it, you can tell by the amount of white how old, whether it is a second year eagle or a third year eagle, or cycle eagle. That's what they call them. Let's see if they have a picture of any immatures. Here you go. So this is a juvenile bald eagle. Look at that. Doesn't look at all like a bald eagle, except that it's pretty distinctively shaped head. You still might be able to know. It's easiest to see an eagle when they're flying because their wingspan is so big compared with their body, much bigger than, say, a red-tailed hawk. So it's a very large bird with a very long wing. Think about if this bird was a red-tailed hawk. Its wing might go to about this, about be this far off of its body. And the eagle's wing is considerably longer than that. So when they're flying, when they're soaring, even if you don't see the white head, you can know that it's an eagle. Now it is possible in Vermont to see golden eagles, which you see over here on the right, which are easy to confuse with a bald eagle. We're not going to get into that because I'm not going to ask you about the golden eagle. I would just be happy if when you saw a bird flying, you could tell it was an eagle, and realize that bald eagles don't always have white heads. You don't need to know the sound. If you remember, I said that a lot of times in movies and things, they replace the sound of the bald eagle with the sound of the red-tailed hawk because the bald eagle Kind of sounds like a chicken or something. I'll play it for you just so you can hear it. So they make that sound mostly on the nest, so they don't really make a lot of sound when they're flying. Okay, last bird of this week is the pied-billed grebe. I love these little birds. So a grebe is a kind of bird that we haven't seen a whole lot of. Usually, most of the grebes that we have around have fairly long necks, but not the pied-billed. The pied-billed is kind of short and stubby. So it's a water bird. It sits on the water. It's a diving bird. It dives down to feed on fish and things. But you can tell right away that it's not a duck by its beak. Okay, so it has a much pointed, more pointed, sharp beak. So it's not a duck. It's not a loon. It's a grebe. And it's kind of, the pied-billed grebes are just so short and stubby. It's very cute. They have this really awesome adaptation, is that they can squeeze. So some of what's creating the buoyancy for a bird like a duck or a grebe to sit on top of the water is the air that gets trapped in its feathers. And that kind of creates, it's like a little float. It's floating there on the water. And pied-billed grebes, and some other birds can do this as well, but they push the air out of their wings, and what this does is it slowly sinks down into the water. So sometimes all you see of a pied-billed grebe is just its little head sticking out of the water, like a little submarine, what do you call those things? I can't think what they're called, but sticking out of the water, looking around. So if it sees danger, sometimes instead of diving, it'll go down in the water. But it is also a diving grebe. So as soon as you see it, it might dive down and pop up somewhere else, much like a loon would do, because it's hunting under the water. You do not need to know. Oh, I have it down that you need to know the sound on these. Okay, let's learn the sound on this. This is really an amazing sound. It has some similarities to the loon, and we might think about that evolutionarily, having a call, if you're a water bird, a call that will carry out an echo across the water as something that you'd want. So listen to this. I don't have a good phrase, but listen to it. I think you might recognize it as similar to a loon sort of call. Okay, there is another sound that it makes. I guess they don't have that here, so we'll just go with that one. I think this part of their call sounds a lot like a monkey almost. Let's listen to it again. Oh, there we go. So that's a lot of noise for a very little bird. Now, I forgot to talk about size because it's hard to tell how big this is. So this is a fairly small bird compared with a duck. So if you think of, say, a mallard, pied-billed grebe is maybe half the size of a mallard. So they're bigger than I don't know, a downy woodpecker, but they're pretty small when you see it on the water compared with a duck. So if you're looking out and you see a duck out there that looks smaller than a regular duck, try to get your binoculars on it and see if you can tell if it might be a pied-billed grebe. Okay, that's the end of our birds for this week. We only have a couple more weeks to go, so we're getting close to the end of the birds that you're going to need to know for this class.